Welcome to the Rediscovery channel. This is the channel where every week I, Ivor Kovac, and my good friend Stilgar come up with a topic from history that the other person doesn't know about and most likely hasn't heard about either, though sometimes that's not the case. So today, I'm going to ask Stilgar, have you heard of Shivaji?
I have not.
What if
No.
I say Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj? That makes it worse, right?
Yeah, like I know, isn't Shiva one of the gods?
Yes. And this guy, he's named after a god, but it's not Shiva. And actually, I can't remember the name of that god, so I'll mention it in the slideshow. But Shivaji, he's actually a great hero over in India. There's statues of him all over the place. And you remember my last topic was about the English, right? How they took over India.
They took over India
Yeah.
piece by piece, slowly but steadily. Yeah.
Yes. And when they came to India, the Mughal Empire was starting to kind of go down, and the Maratha Empire was going up. And the Maratha and the Mughals were the Marathas were gradually eating up the Mughals. So Shivaji is the founder of the Maratha Empire. So this video probably should have come before the last one, but today I'm going to talk about how the Maratha Empire got started. Okay. So yeah, so this guy, his name was originally Shivaji Bhonsle, and he lived from 1630 to 1680, and he is the founder of the Maratha Empire. Okay, so he was born on February 19th, 1630. His father was Shivaji Bhonsle, and his mother's name was Jijabai. So Shivaji, his father, was actually a vassal for a Muslim empire, a smaller Muslim empire called the Bijapur Sultanate, which was a Muslim kingdom that was ruling the area further to the south of the Mughals. So the Mughals had, by this time, they were ruling most of today what we would call India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and even parts of Afghanistan, but they didn't have all of South India was not under their rule. And there were some free Indian kingdoms to the south, but in between there was the Bijapur Sultanate, and there were some other Deccan Sultanates as well, which I can put the names in the slideshow if anybody cares. So his father was a Hindu, but he was in the service of this Muslim guy. And as a child, Shivaji, he was trained in martial arts and swordsmanship and military tactics. And his mother was a deeply religious Hindu, and she shared that, she passed that on to Shivaji, along with a strong sense of morals and ethics, all that comes from Hinduism. And when Shivaji was 10 years old, he actually got married. At the age of 10, he married somebody named Saibai Nimbalkar. And she becomes his first wife, and the son that they have ends up becoming his heir after he's gone. So that happens in 1640. And as he's growing up, he actually spends most of his time outside, and he explores the region. The area that they live in is kind of mountainous and hilly, and there's a lot of forts built on top of these hills.
What's the area called nowadays, where he grew up?
Good question. I believe it corresponds in part with Maharashtra, the Maharashtra state, and also I think a little bit to. I don't want to say something wrong. I want to say it would also be partly in Kerala, in Andhra Pradesh, but I'm not sure.
Maybe you can include it on the pictures, the map when you make the video. Yeah.
Right. And actually, recently in India, they split Andhra Pradesh into some more states, and I'm not really sure what those are called. So it's actually been redistricted even since I've been there. But the area that he was exploring is called the Sahyadri Mountains. And while he's running around as a kid, he's getting familiar with this geography. And by the time he's 15, he's already got followers. He's got a group of guys, and they come from the Mughal region. And later on, these guys are going to aid him in his conquests. So by 1645, and he's 15 years old, Shivaji begins to take over forts from the Bijapur Sultanate. And the names of these forts are Torna, Chakan, Kondana, Singagar, and Purandar. And the way he takes over them is like a mixture of bribes and persuasion. So at this point, he's still not really taking them over by force. But it concerns Muhammad Adil Shah, who is the ruler of the Bijapur Sultanate that his father is supposed to be subordinate to. And so what Muhammad does is he locks up Shivaji. He locks up his father in 1648, and he says he's not going to let him go until Shivaji stops what he's doing. So Shivaji agrees to stop, and they let his father go. But then in 1656, he starts up again. He starts taking over territories and forts. So this is where the next big event that I want to talk about, and I'm going to go into details on this battle and one other one. It's called the Battle of Pratapgarh, which happens in November 10th, 1659. And there's actually some songs and music videos about this that are kind of cool, which probably we can link to in the description. But Shivaji resumes his conquests, and he takes over this place called the Valley of Javali from a guy named Chandra Rao Mori. And I believe that Chandra Rao was actually another Hindu and from the same ethnic group. So just to be clear, Shivaji, he comes from a people group called the Marathas. Today, they correspond to the area called Maharashtra, which is named after them. And the language they speak is Marathi. Marathi is descended from Sanskrit, along with Punjabi and Hindi, and I think Bengali as well. Basically, almost all the Indo-European languages spoken in India are derived from Sanskrit. It's like the relationship between Latin and the Romance languages today, like Spanish, Portuguese, so on and so forth. But what my wife has told me is that Marathi is not mutually intelligible with Hindi, and she can't understand or translate any of the stuff for me from those people. So kind of interesting. So at any rate, okay. Well, so I mean, for me, it is. I like to know like what kind of people group I'm dealing with and what their relation is to others. I guess normal people don't care about that, but I do.
No, I mean it's just like the language, like anyway, like Dutch is a Germanic language, but then if I look at some other Germanic languages, would I be able to just explain what they say? I don't know. It's not that easy. Anyway.
Yeah, I imagine you wouldn't have been able to easily figure out English if you were not taught and given like Dutch equivalencies, right?
Yeah.
It's not mutually intelligible, even though it's related. And same for these languages derived from Sanskrit is they are related, and they do use I believe, I'm 90% sure they use the same text, but they cannot understand each other.
Okay.
I think there's a few cognates. It's like probably bigger than the difference between Spanish and French. Anyway.
Yeah.
So Muhammad Adil Shah, he sends this guy named Afzal Khan to go and subdue Shivaji. And Afzal Khan, he sets out in 1659, and on his way he destroys some Hindu temples because he wants to provoke Shivaji to fight him out in the open. So he destroys a temple at Tuljapur and Pandharpur. And Shivaji doesn't take the bait. He doesn't come out into the open. And so Afzal Khan, he has a much larger army. And his army is mainly designed for combat out in the open, out in the field where you would line up and they would line up. And that's what he's wanting Shivaji to do because he's got a lot more forces and he can overwhelm him. So he has, and I've seen different numbers on this, but for now I'm going to say 12,000 cavalry, 10,000 infantry, 1,500 musketeers, and he is accompanied by, he's got 85 war elephants and 1,200 camels, and then he has anywhere between 80 to 90 cannons. So some of this information is not exact. There's a few points where they're not exactly sure. And also, when coming to some of these conflicts, the Hindus, they have one story and the Muslims have another. And I've seen some other sources where they said that Afzal Khan actually had 20,000 cavalry. So, but I'm saying 12,000 for now. I'm not quite sure about this. And then Shivaji, he has 6,000 light cavalry, 30,000 light infantry, and then 4,000 guys in reserve, infantry in reserve. So Shivaji, he kind of withdraws into one of his forts called Fort Pratapgarh, which is in a hilly area, and a lot of these forts are on top of hills, and they do have cannons. So Afzal Khan comes and surrounds it, but he doesn't have what it takes to actually break the fort. And Shivaji has 3,000 guys hidden in the forest. So what Shivaji does is he tells Afzal Khan that he wants to negotiate for peace instead of fighting it out. And they both agree to meet in this tent at the base of the foothills, and they can each bring, they've got to be unarmed, and they can each bring 10 bodyguards, and they're each allowed to have one bodyguard stationed outside the tent, and then the other guys have to stay at an arrow's shot distance, which I'm not sure how exactly far that would be, but they're not that. They're within sight, but not within that close of a distance, I guess. So both guys actually plan for treachery, and Afzal Khan, he brings a hidden dagger, and Shivaji, he wears armor underneath his clothes, and he also brings a weapon called a tiger claw. Have you heard of the tiger claw before?
Isn't there a meme around the tiger claw? I remember an old internet meme, I think with Kim Jong-un or something, in the tiger claw.
So you know what it is then, right?
No, I don't. Why? I'm guessing it's some kind of weapon that looks like a claw with a chain on it, maybe?
No, it doesn't look like a claw. It's a weapon. It's a handheld weapon with blades that are spaced like the claws of a tiger. And it was a popular weapon for assassins in India because when you kill somebody with it, it looks like they got mauled by a tiger. So somebody forgets to pay their dues, you can be like, hey man, I hear the tigers are out this time of year. Tigers are active this time of year. No, they're not. Well, they are now, unless you pay your dues. And then when they find the body, maybe it was killed by a human, maybe it was killed by a tiger. So, and I'll put a picture of, I've seen different types of tiger claws. Some of them, they have like a dagger, and then the claws, the blades that are supposed to correspond with claws come off of the hilt. And then others of them, they just have the blades. But, so that's the situation. They both go into this tent, secretly armed. And according to the Indian story, the Indian side, which is a side that I believe, Afzal Khan, who's a much bigger guy, pretends like he's going to hug Shivaji. And then when he hugs him, he holds him tight so that he can't get away, and he stabs him in the back. And then, of course, it fails because he's got on armor underneath his fancy clothes. So then he takes out his tiger claw and slashes Afzal Khan. And then when Afzal Khan's bodyguard tries to come to his aid, Shivaji's bodyguard kills that guy. And Afzal Khan, he runs out of the tent, kind of holding his guts in. And he gets onto a litter. He falls down onto a litter and they carry him away. But Shivaji's guys, they chase after them and they kill Afzal Khan and they defeat his soldiers. And then Shivaji goes back to the fort and he tells them to fire the cannons. And at that point, the guys that are hidden jump out. And the first thing they do is they attack the musketeers. They take out the musketeers first. And after that, they send, let's see what I have here. They take out the musketeers, and then he sends his cavalry to attack the Muslims. And the Muslims were actually not ready. They weren't all geared up and mounted. So they end up running for their lives, and Shivaji inflicts heavy losses on them. And then he loots and pillages them. And let's see. They lost their artillery, 65 elephants, 4,000 horses, 1,200 camels, and jewels. One of the sources I have says worth 300,000 rupees, which isn't worth that much today. I mean, rupees, I don't know what that would translate to in dollars, but he does take a lot of stuff from them, and then he also doubles the size of his territory. So then the next battle I want to talk about is called the Battle of Kolhapur, which happens on December 28, 1659. So basically, the Muhammad Adil Shah sends another guy to take down Shivaji. And this guy's name is General Rustam Zaman. And by the way, these Muslims that are here ruling this area, they identify with Turks and Persians and Afghans, and they speak Persian as their court language and their record-keeping language. And then in their conversational speech, they usually will speak Urdu, which today is spoken in Pakistan. That's their language, and it is a descendant from Avestan, which was the original Iranic language. So a little fact there. And this time, the Muslims, they have 3 times the forces of Shivaji, and they also have war elephants. And what Shivaji does is he doesn't wait for them to come, but he takes his much smaller force and has them march like all night long, quietly through the night. So in the morning, when these enemies are waking up, Shivaji is there with his army. And Rustam Zaman, he's afraid that the Marathas have other guys waiting to ambush them from the sides, kind of like they did with Afzal Khan. So he spreads out his troops into something like a U shape in case they're, to anticipate any kind of flanking maneuvers, flanking attack. But actually, Shivaji doesn't have anything else. And as a result of him spreading out for the flanking attack, he leaves the center vulnerable, and the center is where he is. And so Shivaji charges straight for him, and he ends up running for his life. And then when the wings of his army see that he's running for his life, they also run for their lives. And then, after this, he keeps taking more territory, and eventually he comes into conflict with the Mughals. So like I said in the other one, the last video, Aurangzeb is the Mughal emperor at this time. So he's one of the most intolerant Mughals that there ever was. He's the guy that tried to stop them from dancing. So he's the emperor, and he is starting to notice that Shivaji is a threat. And they start to fight with the Mughals in 1657, when Shivaji's generals start to raid and loot Mughal territory. So it looks like the Marathas actually started the conflict with the Mughals. But to be fair, the Mughals are foreigners. They're a foreign ruling class, which has not in any way bothered to adapt to or adopt the native culture. So they raid and loot Mughal territory near Ahmednagar and Junar. And Aurangzeb, who's the Mughal emperor, he sends a guy named Shaista Khan to defeat Shivaji. And this guy comes with a big force, and he does take forts from Shivaji. And he also takes Shivaji's capital, which is a city called Pune. But what happens is, while he's there in the capital, Shivaji comes in with a surprise attack, and he takes it back from him. And it actually, from what I've seen, it looks like Shivaji catches him while he's sleeping, because some of his wives are killed in the process. And Shaista Khan, he ends up losing a finger or two in the fight, and he has to run for his life. So Shivaji takes Pune back, and then they keep fighting with this guy Shaista Khan, and to pay for the war effort and losses that he's suffering, Shivaji attacks and loots a city called Surat, which was a major trading center for the Mughals, and he just he loots the place and uses it to, compensate himself for his losses. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like Skyrim, actually, a lot of the things this guy does. So then Aurangzeb sends another general with a bigger army, and this guy's name is Jai Singh the First, and he has 150,000 soldiers, and he actually puts Shivaji on the defensive, and he takes a lot of forts from Shivaji and kills his soldiers that are there. I was thinking, isn't a Roman legion 100,000 soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So basically, it's about a little over like a Roman legion. So I'm wondering, logistically, how this compares with the Roman Empire, the Mughals.
These are huge armies. It's amazing.
Yeah, but actually, the Mughals, they're actually having problems on two fronts, which I'll come to in a second. Like Shivaji is a problem for them in the south, but then they have a problem in the west as well. So Shivaji, he is forced to sign a treaty with this guy Jai Singh called the Treaty of Purandar, because he's losing this fight, and he signs it on June 11th, 1665. And one of the provisions of the treaty is he has to turn over 23 forts to the Mughals. And Aurangzeb, he invites Shivaji to his capital, which at the time is a place called Agra. And what he wants to do is recruit Shivaji to fight for the Mughals, because he's actually having a problem in Afghanistan. So at this time, the Mughals, they still had some holdings in Afghanistan, which was actually where their ancestors had come from originally. Like they were a mixture of Afghans and Turks and Mongols. Hence the name Mughals. But they're having a hard time with it now. So even back then, Afghanistan was a quagmire, and even for other Muslims. And he's hoping that Shivaji can do something about it. So Shivaji goes, and he takes his oldest son with him, Sambhaji, who's 8 years old. I feel like back then people had to grow up much earlier, than people today, especially doing all this kind of stuff, like building an empire when you're 15, man. When I was 15, I was just like struggling with school. But anyways, when he gets to the
times were a little bit more challenging. I feel like you were forced to grow up fast, or either that or you died, right? So
Yeah, and and this guy got married when he was 10. Man, when I was 10, I didn't even like girls. I was like playing with toys and super soakers. But
those were pretty sweet. But yeah,
this guy's learning cavalry maneuvers and all that this kind of stuff, and and when his father says somebody there's probably some good meme material here, like when you tell your kid to play outside and he becomes a warlord.
yeah.
But yeah, so he goes to the Mughal court with his son. He's probably like, oh, you're 8 years old, time to start learning international politics. And when he gets there, he's offended because of where Aurangzeb has him stand. Like he has him stand with guys of a certain rank, and Shivaji gets annoyed. I guess he feels like they're putting him down at a lower level than he deserves. So he walks out of the court. And when he walks out, they put him under house arrest there in the city. And then this is where things get kind of like, I've seen different versions of this. But basically, while he's there, he pretends to be sick and he starts sending offerings to the Hindu temples that are still in the town to kind of make it look like he's appealing to the gods for help. And then according to one of the accounts I've seen, after he's been doing this for a while, he puts his son in one of the baskets instead of offerings. And then he dresses himself up like a delivery man and he just walks out past all the guards. And they think, oh, Shivaji's just sending another offering to the temple. Nothing to see here. And he escapes that way. But then I've also heard another account that he actually escaped by mailing himself and his son back home, like in a basket. So, yeah, some of the stuff is a little fuzzy. It's hard to know for sure. It's probably a little fuzzy because the Muslims say one thing and the Indians say another. And actually, on that topic, I meant to say, like, Afzal Khan, according to the guy that Shivaji kills or wounds with the tiger claw, according to the Muslim account, they say that Shivaji struck first. But I think probably, Afzal Khan struck first because he was trying to get Shivaji out of the fort and he couldn't. So, but at any rate, he escapes from this place and he goes back home. And for a few years, so he gets back home in 1666. And so for about 4 years, there's no conflict with the Mughals, and there's a mediator who's there. But then in 1670, I should say, so while he's there, Aurangzeb just kind of says, okay, you can be there as my vassal, and gives him a title, like a Mughal title. And then he says, I'm going to let you, attack the Bijapur Sultanate, which it's one of those things like, he's going to do all that. He's doing all that stuff anyways. And you're just saying, yep, you can, giving him permission, even though you can't stop him. And part of the reason the Mughals can't stop is because they're spending a lot of manpower and effort over in Afghanistan, trying to bring that place under control. So in 1670, Shivaji just renews his attacks on the Mughals, and he takes back most of the territory that they had taken away from him within 4 months. And also in 1670, Shivaji attacks the English in Bombay, which today is called Mumbai. And then he also loots the English factory in Danda Rajpuri in 1971. And the reason he does this is because the English were not trading with him.
1671, right?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm a little dyslexic. My bad. Yeah, 1971. Something different was going on there. Yeah. So...
which was during the Anglo-Dutch War, which we've also discussed. When the English was 1666 was when London was burning, and they were hit by the plague. So they were also kind of weakened, I imagine. So Anyway.
Well, but the English government, remember, doesn't really have anything to do at this time. It's just the East India Company.
It's just yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So, but he's angry because they're trading with the Mughals, but they're not trading with him. He wants them to sell him weapons and stuff, and when they won't, he ransacks them. Actually, there was one battle where they gave weapons they sold weapons to the Mughals, and there was like an English detachment mixed in with the Mughals around some cannons or something like that. And Shivaji saw it, and after that, he just, things are going to kind of go downhill from there.
Yeah.
So during this time, the English, their presence in India is much smaller. Their control is much more tenuous, and they're actually in a weaker position than Shivaji. And Shivaji is in a weaker position than the Mughals, but things are going to flip. So let's see here. The next thing that happens is Shivaji. He wants an official title like king or emperor, and he wants to be crowned. So he has a huge coronation in let's see here, 1674, June 6, 1674. They crown him king of the Marathas, and he gets Brahmins to officially crown him, and they do it with a crowd of 50,000 people, which are mostly VIPs and such. And this is when he gets the title of Chhatrapati, which means the like sovereign emperor or king of kings, something like that. And they also they give him some other titles, which I have not seen before now, but Shakakarta, which is like founder of an era, Kshatriya Kulavantas, which means head of the Kshatriyas, and Haindava Dharmadharak, which is defender of Hinduism or defender of the Hindu faith, the one who protects Hinduism. And by the way, Dharma is the obligation of your caste. So like your Dharma, they talk about fulfilling your Dharma. That's how well you adhere to the role of your caste. And actually, Shivaji, he had a little bit of a problem because according to the Hindu tradition, in order to be a king or emperor, you're supposed to have some Kshatriya ancestry, which Kshatriyas is one of the 4 original castes of the ancient Vedic system. And it's the warrior caste. The highest caste, of course, was always the Brahmins, but the Brahmins are in charge of the religious affairs, and it was the Kshatriyas who ruled. And so they found a way to tie him with the Kshatriyas after browsing for a bit. And actually, and it's kind of tenuous, but they did it, and they crowned him. He became the emperor, and this is the beginning of the Maratha Empire. And
he was around 44.
Yeah, he's done a lot more with his life than I did with mine.
Same here. Yeah.
He did a lot more than I did when I was 10, for that matter.
Yeah.
He probably already had a beard when he was 10, or a mustache.
King of Kings, 44. Yeah, nice. All right. Cool.
Yeah. But he doesn't live very long. So he actually
only lived 6 more years.
Yeah, he died when he was 51 years old. He died of actually dysentery. Kind of like, see there? Yeah. And again, it's no joke. Like, that will dehydrate you. At today, he probably wouldn't have died. He would have, eventually he would have anyways, as we must all, but they would have just given him an antibiotic. Or like me, when I was in India and I got sick, they just gave me a couple shots and I got better. Like, I started getting better the same day. But like, I know from personal experience, when you have those kind of things, you really do get dehydrated, and your stomach can also feel sick, and maybe you don't even want to drink water. And that's probably what happened to him. And his oldest son, what is his name? His oldest son, Sambhaji, is the one that takes over, but there's actually a succession. Oh, sorry, he dies. He's 52 when he dies. Okay, dies on April 3, 1680 at Raigad, Fort Raigad. Yeah, from dysentery. And there's an issue because by this time, Shivaji has taken multiple wives. He's got quite a few. And I might name them in the slideshow just so everybody can see. And I think that the reason he had multiple wives was a lot of it had to do with politics. And in fact, that's quite common in the ancient world where these cultures, they have multiple wives. Sometimes it's because the
Yeah, so
dude.
you could tie yourself to different rulers, right? You
Yeah,
never had a daughter. Yeah.
yeah, to prevent war and also to enlarge the power of the territory.
Mm.
So one of his other wives, what's her name? His third wife, Soirabai, she wanted to have her son be on the throne. And he was 10 years old at the time. His name was Rajaram. And they tried to take over. So Sambhaji, he actually had to dethrone that guy. There was a little bit of struggle. Like, he was the one that Shivaji wanted to take over, but this other woman tried to put her son. So Sambhaji has to deal with them. And I believe he actually had Soirabai executed. And the 10-year-old he just disposed of. Yeah. But and Sambhaji, from what I heard, he wasn't as capable or as strong as Shivaji. And there's also some speculation that maybe Soirabai actually killed, maybe poisoned Shivaji. And that kind of stuff is common in the ancient world. I believe that Octavius, Caesar Augustus, he fell victim to something like that, like scheming wives and ex-wives and girlfriends. Different women wanting to have their son be on the throne.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, that's how it goes. In a lot of cases. Or he could have just died of dysentery too. We don't know. But yeah, that's the beginning of the Maratha Empire. And Sambhaji's a little weak, but after that, I think the guy that comes after him is much stronger. And the Marathas, they gradually grow and they eat up the Mughals, who the Hindus don't like anyways. And one way.
What do they do with the land they reconquer? Because under Sharia law, you have all these rules that are basically there to slowly, or either even fast, like it depends. Like, but you basically kill off any other religion other than Islam. Like, did the Hindus have anything like that in place as well? Like places they retook, or did they give Muslims religious freedom?
So, good question. So Shivaji, he actually allowed the Muslims to retain their religious freedom, but he did not allow. From what I've heard, he did not allow the Hindus to convert to Islam under his rule, but he allowed the Muslims to continue to practice, and he did have Muslims that defected over and served in his army. And the thing about it is, in most of these places, Hindus remained the majority, and Muslims were mostly like a ruling class, kind of like in Spain. The Muslims were foreigners that came up from the south and imposed themselves upon the country. And in India, that's the same. They came in from like the north and the west, and worked their way south. So instead of working, they're
in
working their.
Spain, there were entire regions where there were hardly any Christians left in the end, or Jews, because they were there for 500 years. The Arabs and the Berbers, like there, and because of all those laws that made it like so hard for non-Muslims to live there, like a lot of them were converted or like sold off to slavery or forcefully removed into Africa, and there were hardly any left. But was that the case here as well? And what happened? Like, so the Mughals, they were in Pakistan as well, because in Pakistan there's like no Hindus left, right? Is that similar to what happened there, or like were they already killed off at this point in time, or what happened to them?
So The cultural presence is, of course, it wasn't ever called Pakistan back then. Neither was it called Afghanistan. Those names would come later. I just used them to designate the regions. There was a much stronger Muslim presence in the northwest where they came from, because the area of Afghanistan was already Islamized, quickly Islamized, and the area that we call Pakistan was originally the homeland of. It was originally like where Hinduism really started with the four different castes, and the the Mughals, yeah, they converted a lot more people in that area. Which, when the English do finally pull out of India, what they do is, because there was already more concentration of Muslims in Pakistan, they and also in Bangladesh, they separated the country based on that, and they said, this area is going to be ruled by Hindus, this area is going to be ruled by Muslims. And originally, Pakistan and Bangladesh were one country, even though it was not contiguous.
Yeah.
But then there were some race issues between them. And
No,
and
I know about that story about Bangladesh and Pakistan. Yeah.
yeah, and there were some Hindus living in Pakistan, and there even still are today, which I don't know why they would want to be there, but they are. And there's still some Muslims living in India. And what happened since the partition is the Pakistanis, they persecuted and reduced the Hindu population that decided to remain among them to an even smaller number, and they're still doing it. And the Hindus, they did not systematically persecute the Muslims, though they still have like Hindu-Muslim riots and violent conflicts. As a result, the Muslims have really grown, and India actually has a large Muslim minority today. But yeah, so the Muslims, most of the area was still Hindu when Shivaji was there, and especially as you go towards the south. So the Muslims were more concentrated in the northwest and the northeast in particular. And in a lot of places, there were Hindus that were collaborating with the Muslims, like landowners and nobles. The Muslims gave them titles, and they continued to rule the area, kind of like Shivaji's father was one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had, like, in most places, you had a Muslim minority ruling over a Hindu majority, and their level of persecution, it started off pretty strong when they first came under that guy Babur, and then they gradually let up, and they also got a little decadent. But then Aurangzeb, he tightened the screws down on them.
Yeah.
And
which is actually very similar to what happened in Spain as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And some of the stuff that Shivaji was doing, like the Hindus saw it as a holy war. There's also an existential thing for them, and that's why they called him protector of the Hindu faith. And when he formed his own government, he used the Maratha language for everything, for the administration. So it had been a while since the people had a government that really spoke their language. And today, there's actually some people in India, they actually worship Shivaji and they pray to him. So it's kind of interesting, because it reminded me of the Ramayana, which Shivaji also read as a kid and drew inspiration from. And how, maybe there was a guy, there definitely there was wars in the ancient world, and it looks like Ramayana was probably a Bronze Age conflict, judging based on how they're depicted in the gear that they have, and the time that it happened. So it probably is a thing that where you have a dude that's like a really great hero, people add to it. I think the first step is probably to pray to that person. Thinking, well, he's so great in life. Maybe if I pray to him in the afterlife, it'll help. And then eventually blow him up to the point where he becomes a god, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I have. I
Yeah,
feel
cool
like
story. So that's why they celebrate him kind of like as a defender of the faith, and maybe also even a founder of modern day India, I guess, or like
they see him as a proto-nationalist because he had this idea that Indians should rule themselves instead of being ruled over by a foreign a group of foreigners that hates you and tries to wipe out your culture in different ways. What a novel idea. Who would have thought, about something like that? Maybe everyone should have a system like that.
yeah. I
But
guess sometimes it takes a brave 10-year-old to change things. Yeah.
yeah. I don't think that they thought of themselves as Indians. I think they thought of themselves as Marathas and Hindus because the name India was given to them by the English.
Yeah.
It was imposed upon them.
Yeah.
So you might say is a Maratha nationalist.
Yeah.
And Maratha is more of a clear-cut people group than to say Indian, which is more of a modern political boundary. But yeah, it's cool. There's a lot of interesting history over in India, to look at, and some legends. Like there's actually if you heard of uh, Lemuria.
Sounds familiar, but isn't it like an island or something?
It's a lost continent.
Oh yes, yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
There's something about that in Tamil legend. So there's a lot of weird stuff, ancient history and myth that's worth looking at.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
that's all I
Cool.
have for that.
Cool story. I learned something new today. So
Yeah, really, this video probably should have come before the video about the English coming in and taking over. But yeah, I think it's all right. That's why I didn't want to mention I didn't mention Shivaji when I was doing the one about the English, because I thought that it should have its own, like the founding of the Maratha Empire should have its own video, apart from anything else. So
yeah, I kept thinking of Muggles when you said Moguls. But
yeah, somebody else told me about that too. Yeah.
yeah.
One of my other friends like, oh, Mughals, that's
Wonder
what
if
is
that
it,
is
Pokemon or something.
J.K. Rowling from it's Harry Potter.
Oh,
Yeah,
Muggles. Oh, there's
yeah,
something from like Final Fantasy, one of the Final Fantasy games, I think, called Mughals. And they're like, yeah, that doesn't look anything like the real life Mughals.
yeah.
But
And
yeah,
isn't also a saying like you're the big mogul or something, like you're the big cheese.
I haven't heard that expression before.
That might be
But
a Dutch thing. Yeah.
I found out, do you know what the title of the Mughal emperor was in their language?
No.
Padishah.
Ah, Dune, the Padishah Emperor. Yeah,
This
nice.
guy borrowed so much from Islamic cultures.
Yeah,
He must
yeah.
have admired them.
I think he was a Catholic, and he just really enjoyed history, and he read up about Eastern religions, stuff like that. So I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I thought he was an atheist.
I think he was a Catholic. I'm not
Frank
sure.
Herbert
Yeah.
may have been raised Catholic, but I'm pretty sure he was an atheist.
Let's see. Frank Herbert religion. Yeah. Well, he used his science fiction novels to explore complex ideas involving philosophy, religion, psychology, politics, and ecology. Yeah. I don't know what it doesn't say what his religion is.
And he took a lot of inspiration from Islam, and I did try to trace back some of his original cultures. Um, it looks like the Fremen were descended from probably descended from Afghanistan, Afghanistanis, which is actually
Yeah.
like there's no such people group as Afghanistani. It's like a bunch of different tribes. You got like Nuristanis and Pashtuns and um, I think
So it
Baloch.
says here that Herbert was raised Catholic before converting to Zen Buddhism. Oh, okay.
I will temper my. I will withhold from giving my scathing response to my reaction. I'll keep it to myself. But
Which
yeah,
Afghanistan was a Buddhist country at one point, wasn't it?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was before it got taken over by
The
Muslim.
Mughals. No.
Was it taken over by Mughals or was it taken over by Arabs? I think it was taken over by Arabs, and then the Mughals came later. The
Well,
Turks came in. Turks and Mongols came. I'm not sure. I'm
yeah,
gonna.
or was it Persians?
No, it wasn't Persians. I think they probably got overrun. Yes, as what's his name? Yazdegerd was retreating. He was in that area for a while. The Arabs came. Yeah, I think I'm 90% sure it was Arabs, Arab
Okay.
Muslims. It was the original onslaught that caught them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were stopped at, the area that I think the Hindu Kush or something like that. So they didn't. There was the Mughals that came. They were Turks. They came and invaded that area, and then they pressed on into India, and they went all the way like halfway down through the subcontinent in their initial onslaught.
I looked up the tiger claw. It looks a bit like a boxing ring. That's like some of these hooligans will have, like you put it around, but without the claw. It's basically just metal that you put around your fingers and you hit people in the face, but without cutting them open. But that one does look pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
supposed to create injuries that are similar to what a tiger would do.
Yeah.
So if you find a body in the wilderness, and you got to also bear in mind back then there's no blood test, DNA test, or fingerprints. So you have
Oh,
no
yeah, that
evidence.
makes sense. And you had tigers, and you still do in India. So, yeah.
Which, if Shivaji had one of those, it makes me wonder if he might not have rubbed some people out before, before meeting with Afzal Khan. Like, was that the first time he used a tiger claw? I don't know.
May have been practice in the art of tiger clawing people. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and the tiger claw meme wasn't Kim Jong Un. It was with Saddam Hussein, which for some reason there's this tiger claw meme, which has
Was
nothing to do with the video.
Yeah, was that
I
like
saw it like 15 years ago or something, and I laughed my ass off at the time. So
yeah, when he was on trial, which is really
yeah,
just a subjective show trial,
yeah, with the
and
paper rock scissors, and then he pulls out the tiger claw.
pin missile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake to take out Saddam Hussein.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a stupid war. Most of the wars are stupid wars these days. But
And before that, there was a stupid war also with having him fight Iran. And anyway, yeah.
yeah, but if other people groups are fighting each other, I don't really care, and if it doesn't affect me. I mean, I feel sad, but at the same time, I like the Star Trek rule. Like they always talk about, like we don't have the wisdom to interfere, so we should refrain
Well,
because you
that's the
might.
thing is, like, we did interfere, like, we did supply weapons, or the West, supplied weapons to Saddam, and that's how they created the whole situation to begin with. Like, you only make things worse, pretty much. Anyway.
Yeah, all the meddling in the Middle East made things worse.
It's like
You
the
know,
Persians, they were keeping the Greeks away by having them fight each other. But then at some point, the Greeks got so ruthless and so powerful that you got Alexander, people like Alexander the Great, and they came up with these new military tactics, and they were unstoppable. So
yeah,
anyway,
Alexander was he's another historical figure that's very interesting. And I think, though, that he would have come no matter what, because he wanted to conquer. That was his thing. He even conquered into India. They never had any history of interaction at all. So he didn't care. He's like, oh, there's more people here. I'm going to take it over.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes one military genius who gets in the right place at the right time, like the hero of today's story, and they'll change history. So
Yeah, maybe if Shivaji had lived longer, the Mughals would have been wiped out sooner. Of course, if that had happened, I mean, not necessarily, but maybe. But then if that had happened, the English wouldn't. They would have had a much harder time because he had already kind of gotten a sour view of them from them collaborating with the Mughals. So that, yeah, history would have been totally different.
yeah, yeah, man. Again, this 110-year-old changed history, and then his dysentery. Dysentery? How do you say it?
Dysentery. Yeah,
Yeah.
dysentery.
Or
Maybe he was also poisoned too.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
who
Also
knows?
harder to check back in the day.
That's what happens when and some poisons, they look like diseases.
Yeah, they'd
When
probably blame it on COVID nowadays. I'm kidding.
they probably would, yeah. But I think polygamy is not really a much of a thing in India anymore. Uh, I think well, even for the regular people, it wasn't that much of a thing. Um, but actually, that part of India, that little chunk of land that's to the east of Bangladesh, I know they still practice polygamy there because there was one guy that lived there. I read an article about a few years ago. He had like 20 wives or 30, something crazy like that. And he was mega rich, and he had this big house surrounded by like wilderness, and I guess also farmlands. And there was like a helicopter landing pad on it. And every day they'd kill like um, a whole flock of birds and animals in order to feed his children and grandchildren, because they were all kind of living in the same area. But those people aren't, they're not ethnic Indians. They're actually like Asiatic people. They have different religions as well. I don't know how that region came to be part of India, but it is. Yeah, somehow it became part. And what I heard is that when those people travel to mainland India, they get treated like foreigners because they have a more Asiatic physical appearance. They assume that they're foreigners.
Yeah, see, I've seen some videos from Mr. Bald, the YouTube star.
Mhm.
Have you heard of him before?
I'm not.
Okay, he's interesting. He goes to all these crazy places, including India. Also, a lot of Russian videos and stuff like that. And anyway, yeah, I saw them. They look like Asian over there. Yeah.
Yeah, they're an entirely different group. I don't know how they came to be part of India. Probably the English did that, but I don't know why they would have done that.
Well, hey, man, I think we should probably close the story. I think it was a good one.
Yeah.
I thought it was nice to learn about this, and yeah, if maybe people want to like, share, and subscribe to the video, we to our channel, we appreciate it. Every week we come out with a new one, and we're just doing it for fun. We like history. We hope you do too. Anything else you want to add, Ivor, before we close out the video?
Yeah. If you have any topics that you want us to address, we are looking at the comment sections. So so far we've taken up every single request that we've got. If you have something that you want us to cover, do say so. And there's a very good chance that we'll do it. Of course, it doesn't happen right away because these things are recorded weeks in advance. And also, sometimes it takes too long to research a topic that we originally intended. So we end up having to do something that's faster and quicker in the meantime. But yeah, we will get to it eventually.
Yep. So appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yep.